Welcome to Winning Hand, the podcast about Marvel Champions, one card at a time. I am your host, Boom Guy, and I'm joined today by Keiko.
Hello.
Lazy Titan.
How's it going?
And special returning guest, Mr. Meeson.
Hello.
Mr. Meeson, you're here for back-to-back episodes, so welcome back. We're excited to have you. If you listened to the last episode, you'll know that Mr. Meeson is here because in the previous episode that we talked about Daredevil, we teased a giveaway. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later in the episode. If this is your first time here, welcome to the show. We hope you enjoy it. If you are a returning listener and you like the podcast, please consider subscribing and taking a minute to leave a rating and review. That really helps us grow and gets us into everyone's phone and AirPods. As we already mentioned, on today's show, we're discussing the protection card Repurpose. Usually we jump into what we've been playing, and then we talk about an audience question. We're going to scrap both of those this time, and we are going to do something kind of special, which I'm excited about. We're doing a draft today. So we're going to skip the other two and jump right into the draft. The rules of the draft are simple. I'll go over them quickly. I have selected a list of heroes that I think a lot of people would kind of agree, maybe the community would agree, are the, let's say, the weaker or less popular heroes. And most people might say these are kind of like getting a lump of coal in your stocking when you have to play them to carry on the Christmas theme. However, in the spirit of Christmas, we are going to each pick a hero and say something nice about them. In addition to saying something nice about the heroes, we are also going to think of a gift we would give them to kind of help boost them a little bit. Let me just give a quick example so you guys understand the rules here. If I choose Iron Man, for example, he's not one of the ones on the list, but let's say I chose Iron Man. I might say that I really like his futurist ability or the way he builds out his board and his strength over the game, or I really like the art on his cards. And then I might say that the thing I would give him is a stronger alter ego hand size to kind of give him a little bit of a boost. That's just an example of kind of what we would do. You can feel free to add a little more flourish to each of your selections. Are you guys ready?
Never been more ready.
Always.
Any questions about the rules or how it's going to work?
I just want to know why we're breaking the system. Why have you done this to us?
It's our special Christmas holiday episode, end of year. This is our last episode of the year, and I just thought, we'll try something a little bit different. Maybe people will enjoy it. So I will read the heroes. I've given you all a list so you can see them. For those of us who are not here, and this is an audio medium, the list of heroes is as follows. Groot, She-Hulk, Hawkeye, Valkyrie, Hulk, Wasp, War Machine, and Nebula. Now again, these are the heroes that I think the community has kind of agreed are lower on the tier list. If one of your favorites is on here, I'm sorry. I happen to quite like a few of these, and you may like some of them as well. But I just think this is kind of, they've all filtered down. Someone has to be in last place. I have done a randomizer for the draft order. Lazy Titan, you have the first pick in the draft.
Cheater.
Then it will be Mr. Meeson, then Keiko, then me. Then we'll do a second round. So we're going to draft all of these heroes. The second round is reverse order. So I will go again, then Keiko, then Mr. Meeson, and then Lazy Titan will have the last pick, and he will have the leftover hero that nobody else picked that he has to say something nice about. So without any further ado, let's jump into it. Lazy Titan, you have the first pick of the draft. Select the hero that you want to say something nice about.
I think the one that speaks to me the most, I'm going to pick She-Hulk as my number one draft pick.
Okay.
I actually quite like her kit design. The flipping mechanic is, I think, pretty well executed, especially for a core set hero, and her split personalities card is really, really cool. It's an interesting design that is hard to use but fun to get to work. As far as something I would change to improve it, I have actually two things. One's very minor, but it's a pet peeve of mine. One of the things I hate the most about She-Hulk's kit is that her Gamma Slam is limited to 14 damage, which makes sense because she only has 15 hit points. So Gamma Slam, for those who don't know, is a 4-cost event that does damage equal to the damage you've sustained. So it would be 14 otherwise, because if you take 15, you would die because she has 15 hit points. However, there are a couple ways, Symbiote Suit, Endurance, however many ways you can think of to improve your hit points. And I think it would be very fun if you could just do like 25 with the card. But that's just a small thing. As far as actual changes that I think would improve the hero, she would really just need like an update. Really, a lot of what she struggles with is just old card design, like kind of low power for her higher cost. If you just redesigned her today, she would probably be with the same idea, the same kind of ethos for how her kit should work. I think it'd be much better because some of those cards are clearly very old. Those first run cards that I think could be improved. So that would be a refurbish would be my gift to She-Hulk.
All right. Mr. Meeson, you are second on the draft order. Who is going to be your pick, sir?
My first pick will be Valkyrie. So for Valkyrie, a nice thing I can think of is that she has a card in her kit that gives her aerial. So that opens up the ability to play with the aerial tricks that we've seen released over the course of this game, especially now with the Angel Pack introducing a lot of new aerial tricks. And as far as improvements would go, there are two that come to mind. The first is she needs a card in her kit that can generate a resource, and it doesn't matter if that resource can only be used to pay for Deathglow or not, but she needs something just to help afford being able to use Deathglow, just because her whole kit is built around being able to defeat enemies or defend against enemies with the Deathglow attachment. And if you're always having to pay for Deathglow with cards from your hand, you're limiting what you're able to do with those cards that interact with Deathglow. The other thing that I would do is I would give her literally any other nemesis. Her nemesis is one of the worst in the game, I think.
What is it that her nemesis does? I actually don't know.
It's Enchantress.
So
it's the same as the encounter set.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Keiko, you have third pick. What are you going to go with?
I think the hero I'll go to turn from naughty to nice. I think I'll go with Nebula. She was someone that I was trying to make one of my main decks. Well, the things that I like about her is that she has a lot of low-cost upgrades and supports. So you really didn't need to include the resource cards in there, like Genius and Energy. She kind of was able to maintain her economy. But I think the thing that I would like to change about her, one little shout out would be to increase her health. We mentioned before that 9 HP really hurts pretty much anyone. That's really hard to maintain. But I think maybe having upgrades that stayed in play, because her thing is that she plays her upgrades, her signature upgrades, and they pretty much have to discard on her next turn based on her hero ability. But I think maybe if it played off of like Black Panther's upgrades, something that kept upgrades in play, because she's kind of building herself up. That's kind of like her gimmick. But something that just stayed in play, and maybe her ability kind of triggers that, but doesn't discard them, because her whole thing is that you try to, every turn you have to get her upgrade in, and that's just how it repeats. So it's hard to really play any other card.
All right. I have 2 picks in a row now. With my first of my 2 picks, I will choose Hawkeye.
Mm-hmm.
I think Hawkeye has a lot going for him. So let me just start by saying he has great damage potential. I really like that his kit is kind of self-contained, so it feels really cohesive. Everything is working towards the goal of getting more arrows out, with the only exception being his signature ally, who's also awesome and helps shore up his biggest weakness, which is that he's a little squishy with 9 hit points. So I really like that his kit is super cohesive and nothing feels like it shouldn't be there, and it all works together. I think he just struggles, again, with defense. He struggles with thwarting, but we're saying nice things right now. So I like all of that. I like his damage potential. I like his bow. If I was going to give him anything, I would make his quiver, which is one of his key upgrades that lets you, you search your top 5 cards of your deck, and if you find an arrow, you can attach it to your quiver, and you can play cards from your quiver as if they're in your hand. The thing I would give him is to be able to also attach arrows from your hand to the quiver. So similar to how Ghost Spider works with attaching events to George Stacy. Yeah. You could search and find them, but you can also just exhaust the quiver to put one down. Because sometimes I feel like you run out of resources, but you have an arrow and you don't want to waste it. So it would be nice if you could just attach it to the quiver for later. So that's what I would give Hawkeye as a holiday gift. Now my second pick, I'm going to choose Groot. And I really like Groot, actually. I think he has some really cool cards. I think he has an interesting mechanic of the growth counters and trying to keep them and using them for a whole bunch of different stuff. So he can use the growth counters. He's got those upgrades that he can exhaust to give himself thwart or ready himself or boost other stats, which is really cool. It's a cool way to use those. And he has cards that let him get the growth counters. If I was, and I like the kind of high defense, the protection. I like support characters anyway, so I'm drawn to people who can keep other people safe. If I was going to give Groot anything, I would give Groot a new text on his hero card. And for me, and I'm not the first person to say this, but he has a forced interrupt. So his Flora Colossus ability says, forced interrupt, when Groot would take any amount of damage, you remove that many growth counters from him. And for each growth counter removed, you prevent 1 of that damage. I would change it from a forced interrupt to simply an interrupt. So if you wanted to leave your growth counters and take the damage instead, so you could use your growth counters for other stuff, that would be more helpful. I feel like the struggle that Groot has sometimes is that he wants to use his growth counters for literally everything, but it's hard to get them, and they're very easy to get lost. If you get attacked for a big hit, for example, you just might lose them all. So that's what I would give Groot as my holiday gift to him. And with that, we've moved on to Keiko with your second and final pick of the draft.
Well, I guess my second pick also isn't that much of a surprise. The nicest thing I'll say about Hulk is that he shouldn't be on this list. He's obviously the top hero of the game. Obviously, the big things off the bat, he has insane health, right? High attack. The biggest thing, the obvious thing, is that he has no thwart. And I don't think that that's the thing that I'll change about him, because I like that gimmick about him. Whenever I'm playing a game with him, all the times that I lose, whether it's solo or with multiplayer, is because I keep getting exhausted by one thing or another. So when I'm playing solo, I have to try and build him with a lot of good allies. But when I'm with other people, I kind of need them to kind of back me up so that I can deal the damage. So I think maybe that's something that I would add for Hulk, is a signature ally of some sort, something to kind of hold him over just enough for Hulk to be able to do what he needs to.
All right. That leaves 2 choices left. And you have the agency here, Mr. Meeson. You are going to choose the next to last one, and then Lazy Titan will just get what he gets.
So my second pick here will be Wasp. For Wasp, I think one of the neat things about her is she's one of three-sided cards heroes in the game. So she's got her alter ego side, her tiny side, and then her giant side. That when you open up the card, you have your giant form. And just the ability in particular on the giant side, where when you thwart, you can divide it among schemes in play, or when you attack, you can divide it among characters in play, specifically when you are making a basic thwart or a basic attack, I should specify. Having said that, I never feel a compelling reason to be in any size other than giant, unless I can't remember the name of her big attack card, but it deals a certain amount of damage, and then if you're in tiny form, I think it has overkill.
I think piercing.
I don't know. It's been a while. Piercing.
Maybe.
I think
I
so.
haven't played. I don't know if I've ever played Wasp. I think I have, but
It's been a while, so I never feel compelling reason to go to her tiny form on a regular basis. I am usually in her giant form, and specifically when you're thwarting with her, one of my favorite aspects for her is justice. So when you're making basic thwarts and you're when you're boosting her thwart and playing things like making an entrance, and you're able to suddenly divide 5 thwart among 3 side schemes that maybe have 1 or 2 threat left on them. That feels really good to be able to clear all those in one shot. So I guess I would give her something that would help her tiny hero form, be more appealing to flip to on a regular basis.
Yeah, that she gets an extra damage right every time she kills something or clears a scheme, but it's not quite enough.
it's not great.
Well, Lazy Titan, that means you are going to round up the draft, and we know who you're picking already. So, what do you have to say about Rhodey?
Now, I'm actually kind of glad that I got this one because I actually really like Rhodey.
I know you do.
He's one of my favorite heroes. Actually, I like him quite a bit. So it's not hard for me to come up with something nice to say about him. The thing I'll pick though is I really like his art. The art on War Machines, all of War Machines cards, but specifically his hero card is incredible. I love it. I'm pretty sure we've mentioned it before. It's one of my favorite arts in the game. It's just so cool. It's like a very cool like action pose, and then he's got the little like I don't even know what it's called, the little light like lines that come out of a bright light, and there's a little arc reactor. It's so cool. But all of his cards have really cool art. His full auto and his rocket or his shoulder cannon. He just has a very, very nice color scheme with his cards, and then his art is all very, very pretty. As far as something I would give him, I think I would change the way the ammo mechanic works to, instead of needing to spend ammo to play cards, being able to spend it to boost cards. So like being able to spend ammo to give cards piercing or ranged or extra damage or something, rather than needing to play ammo so that it can't lock you out of playing the game.
Yeah.
Because that is, if you don't play War Machine right, that can happen, and then there's only one way to play War Machine, which it's sort of limiting.
Yeah. All right, well, that was the draft. That was our first ever draft. We are thinking about doing this again, so listeners, let us know what you think. Send us an email, winninghandpodcast@gmail.com, or leave a comment down below. Let us know what you thought of this. Did you like this format? Do you want to see more of it? Did you hate it? Let us know. Just before we move on, I wanted to say I didn't plan this. This was kind of happenstance, but I did look at a bunch of rankings and kind of community ideas and tried to pick the ones that were at the bottom consistently. And so I picked these 8 heroes, right? Unbeknownst to my other co-hosts, and we had this draft. And I think what ended up happening, unless I'm mistaken, each of us ended up with 2 heroes through complete accident that we all actually like. I mean, the 2 that I talked about, I actually really enjoy Groot and Hawkeye, and I think each of you talked about 2 that you quite like and have played. So I think it goes to show that even when you pick these quote-unquote bad heroes or these, ones at the bottom of the tier list, like, people still like them all, and I think there's good things to say all the way through the roster of heroes, and it's not just at the top all the time. So what'd you guys think of this?
No, it was really fun.
One thing,
I'm glad that it coincidentally worked out that we each gravitated toward heroes that we already played in this low ranking. I feel like I can unclench now because the 2 heroes I picked are the only 2 heroes I know.
Yeah,
so if
well,
I
you're
picked
new.
anyone else, I wouldn't have. Yeah,
But we didn't plan it that way. It just happened.
no, I'm down for more of these. This was kind of a fun deviation from what we normally do, and it kind of worked out time wise.
Well, then we will move on into the card of the day, and then at the end of the episode, we're going to talk about the contest and the winners and go through some of the decks that won the contest. So stick around for that. Right now, let's talk about the card of the day. So I'll read the card. Repurpose is a 0-cost event. It is traded as a skill, and it says Hero Action. Discard a tech upgrade you control Ready your hero and choose thwart, attack, or defense. Until the end of the round, a hero gets plus X to the chosen power, where X is equal to that upgrade's printed cost. It is a lightning resource, and it came in the SPDR hero pack. Are we saying SPDR? Are we saying spider suit? How do we say that?
I say SPDR.
Spooder.
I say SPDR.
SPDR, okay. I've heard some people say spider suit because it technically says spider suit on it. I don't know. Anyway, that's the pack that I came in. And the art is from a comic. It is from Marvel Adventures Superheroes Volume 1, Number 6 from 2008. I mean, you guys know the categories. Art. Someone take it away.
You're the expert here, Keiko. You can handle this.
I mean, it is a very detailed panel from what I see.
You didn't go to art school, so you wouldn't go first here. Come on.
Exactly. Actually, none of you guys are allowed to talk about the art. That's just how it works. No, I like the shading here, the gradient in the shirt. I always like how metal is drawn and colored. That looks really cool. I mean, there's not a whole lot to say about it. It's obviously just from a panel in the comic. Nothing
Maybe
really
describe
dramatic.
Because
that's
people
true.
are listening to this.
It's Ant-Man, one variation of Ant-Man. Somebody, probably not Scott, but he's looking through a little microscope. We don't see what he's looking at. We just see him looking through a microscope. So the composition for the card itself doesn't really work out. I mean, I guess it gets the point across, but that's about the best description there is.
I'll jump in and say I hate this art. I think it's terrible.
That's the thing.
Strong opinion. I was not going to say that.
It's not, like, you can't really, is he looking at a microscope or something? You can see one eye open. The background is just like a office or something.
Yeah, it looks like a science classroom.
It just is not very interesting.
Yeah.
Like, maybe hate is strong. It's just Ant-Man with a helmet. I don't know. I think the difference between the face and the helmet looks kind of weird, to be honest. Like, they just look like the textures are off or something. And the hand, especially the one, his right hand, the one on the left side of the microscope, the fingers are weird. They kind of creep me out. I don't like looking at this card. I think it's kind of boring.
It doesn't speak repurpose to me. It doesn't.
No.
It doesn't speak to me like a superhero, like taking something apart to reuse it for something different. It's like just a guy looking at something in a microscope. Like I just feel like it doesn't get across what the card does, or really have any tie-in to Ant-Man. Honestly, like there's no connection to Ant-Man, or the card doesn't speak what the card does. I don't know. It feels like a weirdly chosen panel. Feels like they picked the wrong art.
It's rendered beautifully. That's about the best I can say about it, though. Like, looking at the detail of how it was colored. But yeah, I don't like how we don't even see what he's looking at. It's just some guy looking into a microscope.
The reason I didn't play this card for a while is because I did not like the art on this card.
That's harsh.
That is, yeah. I could not stand looking at it, and I don't know what it was, but for me, if the art on a card is bad, then generally I will check out and not bother reading the rest of the card unless it's part of a hero kit, which is not a good thing to do in general.
Art is important. I think this might be, I have to think back all the episodes we've done. This might be one of my least favorite. I really, this isn't super pleasant to look at. I mean, it's nothing to say against the artist. Clearly they're better at drawing than I am. But it's not pleasant to look at, in my opinion. Like Lazy Titan said, it doesn't tell me anything about what the card actually does. So this falls flat for me. This I don't like.
There are worse arts, but...
All right, so that's the art. What do you guys think about the theme of this? Lazy Titan already kind of jumped us into it. Yeah. Anybody else want to add on that?
No, I think that's about it.
Yeah, it just isn't. It's not repurpose. It's not Ant-Man. I don't know. Like, it was Ant-Man.
It's not even about tech. Like I feel like he's looking at a microscope, which makes me think science, and this is specifically about tech.
I think he's building some kind of ant tech, some micro tech.
Maybe
because he's Ant-Man.
I'd rather see, like, I don't know, Rocket with a welder or something, like putting something together,
building a gun or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
like anything that speaks more of like taking something and reusing it rather than just like
Iron Man is like an easy one, right? Like, I feel like there's a lot of easy art there.
Ant-Man could even have done it. He's like sort of techie, but I don't know. Sure. It just doesn't fit really.
Yeah, this is like a research theme, not really a repurpose.
Yeah, it looks like a research card.
Agreed.
So are we talking about the art exclusively or the text on the card when it comes to the theme?
Well, the theme kind of encompassing everything. The first part I think that hits that is the
Encompassing
art.
everything.
Yeah,
Okay.
the art doesn't really work theme wise. But then what
I'd
about the
agree
rest
with
of it?
that,
The
yeah.
text with the theme. What do you think, Mr. Meeson?
I think the text goes very well with the theme of repurposing. You're taking something, whether it's your Iron Man repulsor or your rocket cannon or some roadie tech or even a force field generator, you're ditching it and you're using it as something to block an incoming attack or to throw at an enemy and buff your attack when you're hitting it, or causing a distraction to let you remove more threat from a scheme. I think it's pretty solid when it comes to the theming. I do agree about the art, though, that there's an extreme disconnect based on what this person's doing. But I think text-wise, it's pretty solid.
I agree.
Whatever you got to do, right?
Whatever
And
you got to do.
that's what I think the title of the card really speaks to, is that in a pinch, right? If you're stuck and you need to do something else, you can use it for whatever you can in the moment. And I think that's cool. That theme works. What do we think about the power and the fun of this card? Those always kind of get blended together, but how good is the card and how fun is it?
I think this card's very good. I was actually just sitting here thinking about it. How is this card 0 cost?
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's a 0 cost ready. Technically, you have to pay because you're discarding something. So technically, you're losing effective resources. But you can game the system a little there. But it's so powerful. A free ready is so good, and the decks that are going to use this most already have ready, at least one or multiple. So you're going to be able to use that stat boost multiple times. You're playing Quicksilver. You're playing Drax. You're playing, I don't know, something along those lines.
Rocket. I love this with Rocket.
Rocket or X-23 now.
Yeah, X-23 now.
All those things you can do to just make this ideally a +3 boost. You can make that +3, +6, +9. So that makes this card 0 for 9 damage. Playing Drax, maybe you draw 3 cards off it. It just becomes so powerful because you don't have to pay anything for it. And it's a free ready.
Yeah. Quicksilver goes wild with this.
In a way, though, wouldn't this one card arguably affect the overall build of an entire deck, though? Because then you'd have to add tech upgrades into your deck, based around playing Repurpose. I mean, I haven't really played Repurpose much, so that's kind of like my question, not really a call out.
I mean, we have a deck expert with us. Maybe he can speak better to this than I can, but in my opinion, Repurpose is one of those cards that I build an entire deck around. It's not a card I just throw in to top off my protection deck, if I'm a few cards short and I got to put something in. If I'm building a Repurpose deck, that means I'm either building it around a hero that already has a bunch of tech, I mentioned Rocket, or I'm building tech into that specifically to use Repurpose, because Repurpose is like the core of the deck.
I would say generally if a card requires something, if you can't just play it 100% of the time, you shouldn't just throw it in any deck. So obviously this requires a tech upgrade. So if you're not playing someone who has techs, it doesn't do anything on its own. So you need some setup. Thus, I would build around it. And then the more you build around a card that needs setup, because generally cards that require some kind of setup have a better payoff. So if you can build a deck that can get around, that can make it so 80-90% of the time you can play this, you're getting that payoff, it becomes a crazy efficient card like we were talking about. So 0 for a ready and a +2 or 3 boost is ridiculous.
Kind of crazy for me to think about, though, is like this one card basically affects the entire deck.
Yeah. You got to start. Usually you want to have one of those.
And that's kind of the other part to it too, is you kind of want something of high cost to add that onto one of your basics, but at the same time, there's that struggle of wanting to sacrifice that because, maybe you spent a lot to put that upgrade out or that tech upgrade out.
I mean, for me, Rocket is my favorite Repurpose hero. I think he has a ready already in his card, in his deck. It's the I've got a plan, right? He can ready himself with that. And then he has tech that doesn't run out of charges and get discarded. So the real popular ones are like Force Field Generator and what's the other 2-cost
Energy
one?
barrier.
Energy Barrier, thank you. A lot of people use those, and then you want to repurpose them. But the problem with Force Field Generator, for example, is that's a force response or force interrupt, so that you can't control when that card goes away. So you have to draw into repurpose before you lose all the counters off of it if you want to use that. The weird thing about Rocket is he can use all of his guns, and then they don't discard when they're out of charges. So they just sit there until you draw a repurpose, and then you can chuck them. What do you guys think? Mr. Meeson, Lazy Titan? Keiko sounds like you haven't played it, but the other two, what heroes do you like this with?
I like this with, I mentioned them earlier, Drax, because I love me some Drax. And it's a fun way to spin the deck. I like to do a different deck. So I have a general idea of how that deck works, but I don't have a set deck list for it. Whenever I build my Drax deck, I sort of just go off the dome, and then it changes a little bit here and there. So it's always different. And one of the ways that sometimes I'll take it is repurpose. Then you add in energy barrier. It's a little more set up. It's a little slower, but you can make that work. Plus the energy barrier and the force field generator help him just tank hits, which he already wants to do. So your techs are already doing what you want them to do, and then you can also repurpose them, which means if you're already playing Drax right, you're readying yourself 2, 3, 4 times a turn, which is insane value. And then Quicksilver, obviously, if you play his maximum velocity thing, he goes to 4 in all stats. Play this, discard something, maybe he goes to 7 in, say, thwart. And then you have your free ready, plus you have 1 always be running. That's 21 thwart for like 3 effective cost.
Crazy.
Like, it just, the numbers on this card add up so fast.
The only deck I've really played this with is Rocket, just because to me that was the most immediate. Well, once I run out of charges with these, if I don't want to go to alter ego mode, what am I supposed to do with his weapons that stay in play? And this card helps solve part of that issue. One hero I would like to try this in at some point is Iron Man, just to see how that would play, because he's got a lot of tech, and you don't there's some you won't necessarily discard, like his Mark 6 armor, the one that gives him extra hit points.
Yep.
Like,
and the arc reactor.
Probably not ditching that, but if you're getting down to the wire and you need to deal extra damage, you've got plenty of options you can choose from, because this doesn't say exhaust and discard a tech upgrade. It just says discard a tech upgrade. So you could get all the benefit out of those upgrades, then use repurpose to get extra mileage out of them.
Plus, he does have a free ready with arc reactor.
Yep.
I have played.
And he has a way to go get his tech too, right? Like,
yeah.
he can get it back.
He has Stark Tower, which gets it back out of your discard pile. So you could discard it with repurpose, then grab it back with Stark Tower.
Exactly.
Potentially. It's an alter ego action, so but you can make that work. I have tried that deck. In my experience, it feels really bad to use repurpose because you're lowering your hand size a lot of the time. Because your hand size is dependent on your techs.
I tried it with War Machine.
No.
The problem is War Machine's economy isn't great, but using the team up card or other ways to try to fetch Iron Man out, because he will pull techs out, so that's a way to get them back if you pitch them, but his techs are expensive, and yeah, you don't really want to get rid of him. So he's not awesome, but I tried it. But yeah, I think the card is really, really powerful. How fun do you guys think this is?
I think it's fun. I think like when you can make this card really work and you can get the most out of it, you feel like a genius, because you set up your force field generator. In the perfect world, you play a force field generator, you lose all but one of the counters, and then you play repurpose, and then you ready yourself, and then you ready yourself, and then you ready yourself, and then you ready yourself maybe again, and then you kill the villain or clear the scheme or something. And it feels really cool, and it feels insane that a 0-cost card can do this.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can play 2 in a turn, so then your stat goes from maybe 3 to 6 to maybe 8 or 9, and then you're doing that all over again. Like, the numbers are so crazy that it's just fun to do. And stacking it on top of a hero that already boosts stats or already readies makes it even more insane.
Yeah, I like this card a lot. It's very fun. I'm never bored when I draw Repurpose and I have a lot of good targets on the table, or even if I just have a few targets, it can really make the difference if you're running behind on forwarding the main scheme. If you draw it, it'll help
Yeah.
you a lot.
Yeah, I think this card really breathed some new life into protection and gave it a new
new purpose, if you will.
Okay.
It's a meta. It's a meta card.
Professional podcaster here. No, I think it really did bring something new to protection that it was lacking. Protection's long been my favorite aspect, but this just reinforced that. I think it just gives it another tool, another weapon that you can use and to build decks with. So I'm a big fan. I think it's super fun. Final score time, and then we're going to talk about the decks from the contest. So
I will give Repurpose, kind of torn here. I'll give Repurpose an 8.
Okay.
I think it's solid. It's a card that you can build around, which I like. I like a good build around card because it provides a deck building challenge. It's cost effective, but it does require some setup. It loses some points because there's only so many techs unless you're playing a tech hero. So you're just playing Energy Barrier and Force Regenerator, which they're good, but it wish there were more. And the art loses some points for me. It just isn't anything special. But overall, I like this card a lot.
I'll go next. I'm going to be a little harsher on the art. I think this is a 7 out of 10 for me. The card is great. I really, really enjoy the card. I think, like we just said, it gives protection something else to do that's different. You know, there are basic cards that interact with it, so you can use it in any aspect, like Plasma Pistol or Sidearm. Maybe that's only a weapon. Plasma Pistol, for sure, is a tech. You know, so that can be used in any aspect, and then other aspects don't have a ton of techs, but there are some heroes that have it. But I think this is great. I think it's a really, really fun card to play. It is kind of a, you know, it interacts with those higher cost cards in a way that we talked about Hone Technique a few episodes ago and how that kind of boosted high cost aggression events. And this boosts those high cost supports and upgrades, some of them, like Force Field Generator, which, you know, 3 costs is kind of high, but it gives it another reason that you want to play those cards. So that's really cool. I just think the art is a bad choice and also ugly. So I'm going to give it 7 out of 10, but I do love the card a lot.
Go Meeson.
The only critical thing I have to say about this card is the art, but I'm not going to let that be as harsh as you guys are. I'm going to give it a 9
Attaboy.
out of 10. Again, I think it would be a 10 out of 10 if the art were anything else or anything that captured truly repurposing.
Keiko, final thoughts? I know this is kind of your first exposure to the card, but
Yep. I think overall, I'd give it a 7 also. So I'll just touch on the art. Obviously, that's the thing going around. It's a shame because the art itself is so beautifully colored. Like, even the microscope is so detailed, but it just doesn't convey anything about the card or what it does. But I would also agree that it seems like it's kind of limited based on the tech upgrade you put into your deck and or specific heroes. I mentioned before that justice is my least favorite aspect, but protection is probably my least played aspect. So for me, I'll probably never get around to this card because you have to take into account the hero and or the tech. Plus, I'm not really a protection player, but I do like the layers to it. It's a very intricate event as far as events go. You know, it's like a multi-step, you know, discard a tech, ready your hero, and then add blah, 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 blah. And I think it being a 0 cost is actually very balanced, right? Because ultimately the cost is you're weighing how much you want to get rid of whatever upgrade you have out on the board for that payoff. So I think overall, with all those things considered, I'd give it a 7.
So I think overall, we're pretty positive on this card. The art was kind of a major downside for all of us, but still 7s, 8s, 9s. This is a solid score and a good card. And normally, this is where we would say goodbye and end the podcast, but we are going to go a little bit long today because as we mentioned in the previous episode, Mr. Meeson brought along some promo cards from the last cycle, the Mutant Genesis cycle, to give away. And we put out a call for people to create decks using this card, Repurpose, and the X-Men for the promos that we were giving away. And we're calling this our, get ready for it, X-Mass giveaway. So
I don't get it.
it's because the
What
never mind.
about X-Man's giveaway? Because the X-Men we're giving away the X-Men.
Stop trying to change. That's better. Okay. All right.
I'm trying to help you
I
out
thought
here.
it was clever.
Whatever. Thank you, Mr. Meeson. It was clever.
It was clever, but mine was better.
Anyway, like we said, we wanted people to submit their decks using Repurpose and an X-Men of their choice to kind of showcase what this card can do and do something interesting. So we picked winners. If you are a winner, you have already been contacted. And at the time of this recording, which is just a couple days before it will go live, you already know if you won and you know what your cards are, and we will get those in the mail to you. Congratulations to all of you. But each of us looked through the list of decks, and we wanted to give you a little more shout out than just that, because of the effort that went into making these decks. So we each picked one that we are going to talk a little bit about. It's not going to be a ton of time because this episode is already going along, but we're just going to go through a little bit, maybe provide some feedback, say some things we like about it, introduce the deck a little bit, and we'll go from there. So not everybody will have their deck read. If you didn't get yours read, I'm sorry, there's only 4 of us. One other quick note, were a number of decks submitted that were disqualified. So the rules of the contest were you had to use Repurpose and you had to use one of the X-Men heroes. There were a number of decks submitted not using X-Men heroes. So I'm sorry if you went to the trouble of creating a deck that was not the assignment, and we had to find a way to disqualify people because not everybody can win. We will do more of these going forward in the future, I think. They seem to be pretty popular. I'll go first. I'll talk about my deck. So the name of the deck that was submitted was Colossus Gets Technical. It's a protection deck, obviously, using Colossus. And right away, I'll post these decks in the show notes. So if you want to click and look through all of it, you can. Right away, I'll talk about just some of the things I liked about this deck. So it uses 6 allies, Armor, Brother Voodoo, Clea, Jocasta, and Nightcrawler, along with Shadowcat. So right away, I really like that Jocasta is here and Brother Voodoo is here to try to find Repurpose. Jocasta in particular is a really good one because pulling out Repurpose and sometimes the timing of it, if you have a Force Field Generator or Energy Barrier out, you don't have Repurpose in your hand at the right time. So Jocasta can help you avoid that by finding the event. As I mentioned, Energy Barrier and Force Field Generator are both in this deck, so those are good targets for Repurpose. Also included Defensive Training, which is a really good call because Defensive Training is a 1-cost support that has 2 counters on it, and when you, as an alter ego action, you can exhaust the card to remove a training counter and choose a protection event in your discard pile to shuffle it in your deck. So just another way to find Repurpose. And for Colossus, who wants to go to alter ego fairly consistently anyway, I think including Defensive Training is a really good call here. I don't use Defensive Training a lot, but it works well here. Just some other highlights I will say to the creator of this deck. Counterpunch is a really good call. So if you're going to boost your attack, it does last until the end of the round with Repurpose.
That's clever.
So you can use Counterpunch. I thought that was pretty cool, actually. What Doesn't Kill Me adds some readies. It looks like they also included Plasma Pistol, as I mentioned, another tech, so another target for Repurpose, and Symbiote Suit, which also gives you the additional stats and hand size so you can draw into what you want more often. The only kind of pointer I would give here is it doesn't have Limitless Stamina, which to me feels like an automatic include with a Colossus Repurpose deck. Limitless Stamina is a 1-cost basic that allows you to ready if you have more than 14 printed hit points. So that's the only thing I probably would have mentioned here. Maybe Moira McTaggart to make use of some more card draw if you're flipping a lot. But Colossus Gets Technical is the name of the deck. And thank you to the person who submitted this.
It's got Symbiote Suit, so it's got to be a really good deck just based on that merit.
We will get to Symbiote Suit one of these episodes very soon, Keiko. Just wait.
I'll be
okay,
waiting.
so how about Lazy Titan? Do you want to go next?
Sure, I'll go next. So the deck that I selected was, it's called Psionic Redirection. It is a Jean Grey deck in protection, obviously. And basically the idea that I'm reading from this deck is that you want to use the defense cards in the deck. So has Preemptive Strike and Psychic Misdirection. Psychic Misdirection is a psionic only card that lets you make a enemy attack a different enemy instead of you. And then it also has Polaris for a tough card and Nightcrawler to block damage as basically ways to not use your basic defense because you want to save that use for when you can repurpose. So the idea is to use her to defend without defending and then use her high base stats, whether that's attack or thwart, whatever you want it to be, and then turning that into like a big turn with repurpose. So Force Field Generator, obviously, and Energy Barrier are also ways to defend without defending. So you put those out, say you're in restrained form, I think it's called, and then you thwart for 3, ready yourself, give yourself +3, thwart for 6 more, maybe ready yourself with her own card, thwart for 6 more, easy 15 thwart for a quick repurpose, and you're keeping yourself alive. And then it also has a lot of like alter ego synergies to find those allies a lot. So her own ally, Cyclops, who lets you put counters on or take them off of her upgrade, which is helpful for managing that. And then Nightcrawler and Polaris, which are good to find to be able to keeping yourself alive with those tough cards with Polaris and the Nightcrawler's defensive abilities. All in all, I think it's very cool. One thing I like in this deck that I'm seeing is Team Building Exercise, which is a card I don't play a lot, but a lot of her events are psionic. So I think that's a cool little synergy there. I will say I would put the what's it called? The Psyglaive or whatever from the Cable set that just does 2 damage whenever you play a psionic card.
Yeah.
That feels like kind of an auto include. And I would probably put in, it does have Protective Training, which is, it gives +3 hit points to an X-Men ally. It only has 3 allies though. So I would probably recommend either putting more allies or cutting Protective Training, because that's sort of the odd card out in this list. But other than that, I like this. I like the way this is built. I think this is really cool.
Keiko, why don't you go next and let our guest have the last word?
So I went for No Guns for You, mister. This is a Wolverine-built deck, which is interesting. Wolverine and protection, something I haven't done before. This also has Counterpunch in here. So this deck looks like it's built mostly on readying up, having the enemy attack you, because he also has Taunt in here, and just being able to hit him back as hard as you can. You know, having Taunt in there, forcing the enemy to attack you, you get to draw cards on top of that. Having Counterpunch in there, there's just so many different ways to ready up, along with his Berserker Frenzy. I don't know. I think it's a card that a deck that I'd be interested in playing, but there are also a couple of cards in here that are reaching into like the 3-cost, 4-cost, and I wonder if it would benefit from having more resources in there, because there's only one resource card that is included in the deck, which is Strength. None of the other 2, and no other type of resource generator. But I want to see if that's maybe something to discuss with you guys on, if that's a benefit to have it in there, or if he was trying to keep within a 40 count deck.
Yeah, not including the other ones seems a little odd to me. Doesn't have any resource generators. I mean, Logan can pay for his attack events, right? But none of these are really attack events. So it does seem an odd choice to not have the doubles or any resource generators. But what does Mr. Meeson or Lazy Titan think?
I think that is weird. I think that seems maybe...
Yeah, because he's got like Energy Barrier, Plasma Pistol in here, which again kind of goes into there's only so many techs that you can throw into the deck to use for repurpose. But I like that this deck is basically based around having the enemy attack you so that you can draw a bunch of cards and ready up over and over. It's got What Doesn't Kill Me, it's got Taunt, right? It's got Repurpose, of course, Counterpunch, and then identity-specific cards like Berserker Frenzy. Like, it really looks like You want to be attacked in
Yeah.
here so that you could counter those attacks.
I think the reason, looking at this list, the reason that is, to me, I'm reading this is because you want to be playing those events, and all those events are pretty cheap. So they have strength in there, which to me reads that the only card that costs 2 or more that they really care about is what doesn't kill me, because it requires a fist resource. So that reads to me like they want to be ignoring sort of Wolverine signature cards and playing a lot of these cheap events like Counterpunch and Repurpose and Taunt and What Doesn't Kill Me to just focus all in on the readying and sort of disregard the other benefits of Wolverine and maybe just like use his claws to play those and sort of really lean in on that. It does make the energy barriers a little expensive.
Yeah, and plasma pistols, they all cost 2.
That's how I would read. It's very focused on readying. Has Utopia in here just for that one ready. Yeah, this deck wants to only ready and repurpose. It doesn't have like sort of a side plan, is what I'm reading.
I think the X-Jet here would be helpful.
Yeah.
I also almost think that the Power of Protection might be a solid call in this deck. It pays for armor, it pays for energy barrier, it pays for What Doesn't Kill Me. That's just my call, but overall, this is a interesting deck. Mr. Meeson, you have the last word on decks today. Why don't you give us the one you picked?
So the one I picked was Rogue is ready to repeatedly call Repurpose. And I picked this primarily because I can only ever recall playing Rogue once. And much to my satisfaction, that was the time that my obligation killed you, Boom Guy. And if that's the only time I ever get to play Rogue, that's fine with me. Having said that, looking at this deck list, I think I want to try it because Rogue is an underplayed hero for me. Basically, what I'm seeing in this is she's got her superpower adaptation, which I believe is a card you guys have talked about.
It is, yeah.
Where you get to attach it. You've got this touch card you're attaching to different characters. And depending on the type of character it's attached to, you can search the owner's discard pile for an event that matches the same classification. So what you're doing in this case is you're attaching it to one of your protection allies, so you can go look in the discard pile, and this deck has a lot of readying effects. It also has another card in here, Leading Blow, which is a pretty good protection card to pair with Repurpose. So you could repurpose one of the tech cards in this deck, which this deck has Energy Barrier and Plasma Pistol. Repurpose one of those, and then potentially get multiple uses of Leading Blow by being able to pull Leading Blow, which is a free card, back to your hand from your discard pile. And this deck has 5 protection allies: Armor, Brother Voodoo, which can help you find your Repurpose or your Leading Blow, Clea, Polaris, and Starhawk. So overall, very interesting. I've never played a deck yet that's had Leading Blow and Repurpose in it, so I'd like to give this one a shot.
All right. Well, that is the 4 decks that we picked. Again, if you were one of the winners and we didn't pick your deck, I'm sorry, we just don't have time to talk about all of them. But we do want to thank everybody for submitting their decks and for being in the contest. That was really cool. I think we'll definitely do more of these in the future. What do you guys think?
I think that's fun. I like that. I think it's fun to look at a deck and sort of guess where they were going with that. I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
It's not perfect because they obviously can't necessarily tell us what the actual answer was, aside from writing a description. But I think that was fun to see how other people build decks, because I know how I build decks. But I think it's interesting to see other people's ideas.
Yeah, I think going through decks like that could be something fun to try again in the future. Well, this is the last episode of 2023. We will be back in 2024, of course, but we're still a pretty new podcast. 2023 was the first year that we were around. So kind of before we go on the last show of the year, as one of the main hosts of the podcast, I just want to say thank you to everybody who has listened. It's been really awesome to hear from everybody. I love getting emails and messages from you. It's always nice to know that people enjoy the podcast. We don't make money from this podcast. We have no plans to monetize it. We really are just doing it because we like the game and we enjoy giving back to the community and we like interacting with everybody. So we will be at the Con of Heroes again this year to see people in real life. If you want to come out and play with us, that would be awesome. But yeah, thanks to the audience. Thanks to my co-host and Mr. Meeson, who is our 3-time returning guest at this point. But thanks everybody for a great year, and I'm looking forward to an awesome 2024.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
As we're nearing the end of the year, coming into the new year, obviously we're going to keep doing this. I'd like to know what everybody's New Year's resolution is concerning what we do here, what we cover. It's something Marvel Champions related.
Yeah. Give us what's
ultimately
your resolution for the year?
Exactly. Ultimately, we're a podcast for fans by fans, so it kind of feeds into itself,
Yeah. What do you want to see from us next year? What did you like in this first 7 or 8 months that we existed? Would you like to see more of that? Do you want to see stuff we've done? Do you want to see different stuff? We love getting feedback from the community. As Keiko said, we are just fans of the game, and we just like doing this and sharing what we can. So we're always happy to get feedback. All right. Well, that will do it for the episode. That will do it for the second giveaway we've had, and that will do it for 2023. We will surely have more giveaways in the near future, so stay tuned. If you listened this far and you enjoyed the show, it would mean a lot if you just took a minute to leave a review. That does help us out. Like I said, we don't make money from this, but we're just trying to share it with the community. But that's it from me, Boom Guy, the host, one of the main hosts of this podcast. And I will say goodbye from me and Lazy Titan and Keiko and Mr. Meeson. And we will see you all in the new year. Thanks.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Goodbye.
Merry Xmas.